Hi everyone, welcome to today's lesson. Today we're going to deal with something called iambic pentameter, and it's the form that Shakespeare wrote in. So if you're not familiar with Shakespeare, I know we talked about him a little bit in our last lesson. He's pretty much the most famous playwright during the Elizabethan period. I don't know if there's room for debate there. Shakespeare was that era. Although there were other talented writers then, he's kind of the one that persists in our culture today. The Elizabethan period, or at least the part that Shakespeare was writing, was the late 1500s into the 1600s. Some of his more popular works, probably the one that's most popular and heard of by most people, is Romeo and Juliet. That's the one that we're going to read in a couple weeks. Hamlet, Midsummer Night's Dream, Macbeth, he's got tons of different plays, but those are some of the more popular ones. So what we're going to do today is to try to identify and get a sense of what iambic pentameter is, because that's how Shakespeare wrote, and we want to make sure that we understand that form of writing before we jump in and do some reading with it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to read one of his sonnets. We did poetry earlier in the year. If you need to go back and review any of that, I'm not going to go as in-depth with poetry, but we'll do some poetry as kind of a getting to know you with Shakespeare, because he uses a similar form in his plays. So this is his sonnet 18. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometimes declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long a man can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. So that first time, I just wanted us to hear it. We're going to spend some more time with his sonnets, what actually is a sonnet, and what makes it that versus just a standard form of poetry. But I'll talk a little bit about the line by line, because that's the iambic pentameter part, and that's what we're going to focus on today. So iambic pentameter uses a lot of things that feel natural and then puts a lot of fancy words on it. So the first thing I want to cover is something that you probably covered in preschool and in kindergarten, is the idea of syllables. So a syllable is the sound that we use to speak. It's made by the way that consonants and vowels interact, like A, E, I, O, U, and then all the rest of the letters. So a word like water has 2 syllables, water. Tomorrow has 3 syllables, tomorrow. If you're not sure how to do it, you can clap it out. Again, I still have flashbacks 27 years after I did it, of doing this stuff when I was very, very small, saying water, tomorrow. So if you need to, clap it out like that. It's a really easy way to say this has this many syllables, and to check that on each word. So your challenge here will be telling me how many syllables each of these words has. The, Saturday, orange, cabinet, and individuality. I put that last one in there as a challenge. Individuality may be a little tougher and have some tricks in there, but see if you can determine how many syllables each of those has. So let's talk about iambic pentameter. Iambic pentameter is a way to split up writing lines by thinking about syllables. So in Shakespeare's sonnets, in his plays, and all of his writing, he thinks about his writing line by line. And that's one of the reasons why his writing is so nuanced. I could talk about this for half an hour. I will make it really give you the short version of it. But I want to talk about those words, iambic pentameter, and I'll speak about it a little bit through like the fancy language they use, and then we'll talk about it in the way that we'll actually care about and try and make it a little more simple and accessible. But iambic pentameter, so an iamb is 2 syllables. That's the simple definition of iamb. Anything that is 2 syllables together would be termed an iamb. Pentameter is a line of writing with 5 feet. The prefix penta means 5, like the Pentagon has 5 sides. I don't know if you guys knew that. But a line of writing with 5 feet, or iambs. So penta 5, iambs 2. So 5 times 2 is 10. So a line in Shakespeare's writing that is in iambic pentameter will have 10 syllables. Example of that is this right here, shall I compare thee to a summer's day, and I'll show you how that looks if I can get my writing utensils to cooperate. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? We got 10, right? Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? So it's in iambic pentameter, it has 10 syllables. So now let's complicate that term a little bit. So in order to do this, you're going to first have to listen to someone much smarter than me. There is another video in today's lesson, and it is about Iambic pentameter, Shakespeare, and Shakespeare's relationship to hip hop, rhythm, kind of why all this stuff exists. So you're going to watch it from the 3-minute and 45-second mark to the 7-minute and 45-second mark. Double check on the assignment. I have those times written down. But that poem, the sonnet that I read at the beginning of class, you're going to hear another person read that poem again, but they're going to do it in a much better way. And hopefully some of that like syllable and why Shakespeare writes in this way, you'll get to hear it a little bit better. And then we'll talk more about like why it works. So pause me, go watch that video, come back. You may need to watch it like one more time at the end for everything to click. But go watch that now because it'll help the rest of this make sense. All right, hopefully you have paused me and gone and watched that video. So now we're going to talk about some things within iambic pentameter. One of them is meter. So meter is the regular pattern of stressed and unstressed syllables. And that was part of what he was talking about in his video, that like the way we speak fits a rhythm. In English, there's a specific rhythm. Other languages have a different rhythm or a different pattern. But usually for us, it's the number of symbols, and one ends up sounding stressed and the other unstressed. So if you've ever read Dr. Seuss before, he's got a book called One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish. There's a pattern between the way that those words interact. I'll get into that a little bit more in a second. So a stressed and an unstressed syllable. A one-syllable word is stressed. A word with 2 or more syllables usually has 1 stressed syllable and 1 unstressed syllable. So stress just means the part that you're putting the emphasis on. So when I say the word emphasis, if I said emphasis, I'm putting the stress on a different part. So like my first name has 2 syllables, Declan. The stress is on one part and then the other part is unstressed. Dec has stress on it and then Len has less stress on it. It's just the part that you're giving more emphasis when you're speaking. So try to say your name aloud. If your first or your last name has more than 1 syllable, think which one are you giving more emphasis, and then try to say with the emphasis somewhere else and see how it sounds weird. So we speak with emphasis whenever we say things. We don't really notice it because it's the natural way that we speak. So in writing, there are symbols that show this. So you have that line when it's a stressed syllable and that little U sign when it's an unstressed syllable. And the stress is just the ones that are louder or have more force, and the softer one is when you have less force. So if I go back to my title, 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish, all the stressed syllables come first. And this kind of back and forth, sometimes it goes the other way, the unstressed come first, but the back and forth between stress and unstressed kind of shows the natural way we speak. 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish. I wouldn't put the stress on both words because then it would sound a little bit weird. That's not really the natural way we talk. So iambic pentameter, the way it works is it uses an unstressed syllable first and then a stressed syllable second. So if you think back to the way that he was reading the poem in his video, it fits into those different rhythms because it has this natural rhythm of speaking, and I can speed it up, I can slow it down, I can fit it with a beat in the background, and it still makes sense because this is just how we talk regardless of the speed. So for example, today, July, succeed. The emphasis is on the second part. Today, July, succeed. Like I'm putting more emphasis, and I'm really showing it now to make the point. But when you speak naturally, when you say the word today, the emphasis is on the second half of the word, even if you're saying it faster. Okay, so all of that was to say iambic pentameter is how Shakespeare writes. The part that we're really going to interact with is the syllables, because we're going to trust that Shakespeare's doing it right. We're not going to go through and assess his stress and unstressed syllables. That takes a lot more depth of what we're doing here. I just wanted to make sure that like we heard that stuff, we kind of got it, so that when we go in and we see like Shakespeare's writing, we're not like, oh, this is kind of a goofy way to write. Why does he do it? Just so we have some of that background knowledge. So Shakespeare writes in iambic pentameter. We're going to see if we can become experts at using iambic pentameter. So I'm going to give you just a bunch of different sentences, and you are going to try to identify whether it is or is not iambic pentameter. So these first 2 lines, they are from Shakespeare, so I'm going to kind of cheat. These ones are iambic pentameter. What's in a name that which we call a rose by any other word would smell as sweet? So both of these are iambic pentameter, and I'll break them down for you. So you can see the unstressed and the stress. What's in a name that which we call a rose by any other word would smell as sweet. So it's not just like, sometimes it'll break up between words. So like this has the unstressed and then this has the stressed. So it's not always by word, but it's 10 syllables on a line, and we go back and forth between that stressed and unstressed. So I'm going to run through a bunch of different sentences. I'm just going to read them, and then in the assignment you will tell whether or not they are iambic pentameter. And when I'm asking if they're iambic pentameter, really all I'm asking you to do is to identify, is it 10 syllables, because we're going to assume that the stresses are correct. Good pilgrim, you do wrong your hand too much. Iambic pentameter or not iambic pentameter. I strike quickly being moved. But soft, what light through yonder window breaks? Or else beshrew them both. I say silver sound because musicians sound for silver. Oh, teach me how I should forget to think. All right, so those are all of our sentences we're going to try with. Again, coming back to Sonnet 18, we're going to spend some time next time with sonnets, with poems, with how iambic pentameter lives in here, and just what Shakespeare is doing with all of these. So hopefully today we got a little bit of a sense of iambic pentameter. We're starting to hear like Shakespeare's writing, because not only is it in iambic pentameter, his words are also several hundred years old. So there's words in there like wondrous, and I'm trying to see, this one's not too bad. There's some words that are a little different from how we speak. So we'll spend some time getting familiar with that too. So hopefully today you feel a little more comfortable with iambic pentameter, specifically the idea 10 syllables per line, and then we'll add a little more to that next time when we look at sonnets.